Tonight we kick off our very first episode of The Science of Society with brother Darryl Waistline Mitchell.
You know, when we talk about the science of society, we're talking about the work and study of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. And it was actually Engels who called what they did the science of society. I'm aware that various segments of Marxism define Marxism different, but you know, the school of thought I'm from, we've always called it the science of society. And the reason we call it that is because Marx and Engels gave humanity as a whole, for the first time, a comprehensive way to understand society. And at the same time, they created a combination of words and terms they use to describe society. For instance, words like social relations of production, words like productive forces, words like abundance, accumulation of capital, right? And a number of different terms like base, meaning the economy superstructure, meaning something that's built above the base. In this case, all your institutions in society that services the society. The reason the science of society is important is because before Marx and Engels created these categories, people looked at society as being ruled by great men without any comprehensive laws. In fact, these great men ruled by the grace of God and or on the left-hand side of God. Marx and Engels said, no, society has coherence to it. That in order to make things more understandable, we have to begin from the point of view of the production of the means to exist. And next to the production of the means to exist, how these things are produced. So Marxism is foundation, its discovery and discussion of the science of society begins with human beings and how we go about reorganizing society every single day to produce our socially necessary means of life. That is why the science of society is important to understand, look at, and study. It gives us a way to understand the society we live in today. It gives us a context to understand the upheaval that's taking place in the society we live in today. And the upheaval that's taking place in society today is the result of revolution in the means of production. Robotics, computers, big data, and these very new systems that's used in daily reproduction is causing in the context of our upheaval. But that's why science of society should be an approach.
I like the idea, I like the thought of science of society because it's broad, it's not limited. I don't think to come through and say this is a show completely dedicated to Marxism will be acceptable to a broad enough audience. And I also like the fact that when you mention a term like the science of society, it sounds intriguing. And coming from a theoretical background, it opens the door for you to add other social theorists and their work. And it also allows for those who have advanced beyond Marxism to take some of those theories and methods and philosophies and advance them.
I don't know, where can I start with this? Because everybody looks at things so different, right? Like, I look at Marxism a certain way. And let me shift gears because I come up in a religious household, right? And I'm going somewhere with this. And I've met a lot of religious people in my life. I still go to church, you know, now and then when my soul needs saving. But what I'm trying to get to is that the basic text and doctrine used in churches, the Holy Bible, you know, the King James Version, if you know, Catholicism, you use a certain approach. If you Jehovah's Witness, you use a certain approach. But the point is that there's a Bible that's used. What I've discovered in my time is that most people who swear by the Bible have not read it. And it's pretty much the same way with Marxism. A lot of people who swear by Marxism and claim to know it have not read their fundamental text. And for someone that has read their fundamental text, it's easy to recognize these people. I say it because I've run across some of the brothers in particular who claim to be historical materialists, like a term that's coined to talk about Marxism, but they claim to be historical materialists, but they, for whatever reason, have objections to the thing called Marxism. And Marxism isn't like a religion or anything. It's a way to understand the society we live in. And I'm saying that to say I don't know anyone or any collection of doctrines that have advanced beyond Marxism, and I would be profoundly interested in any document or any individual, for that matter, that claims to have advanced beyond Marxism. I would love to read their material and study, And I guess I'm saying it like that because my comrades and I have got together and we decided to produce a Marxist glossary, And it's interesting that American revolutionaries, American Marxists, have never produced their own Marxist glossary until the comrades and I got together and did it. And I find that interesting and remarkable because we in a country where a lot of people, a lot of groups have claimed to be Marxist, but the question is, how come in 130, 40 years, no one has produced one single, reasonably comprehensive Marxist glossary before us? And I think that answer in itself is intriguing. Now, the Marxist glossary that we inherited, let's say 50 years ago, was produced by L. Harry Gould, writing out of Sydney, Australia in 1939 to 1943. The last standard edition come out in 1943. And we reprinted this glossary when we were gathered together as a Communist Labor Party in the 1970s. Again, my point in all of this is that a lot of people who have not given themselves an opportunity to study Marxism have picked up bits and pieces of it, and they heard the various narrow-minded critiques of what somebody said Marxists said, but they never used any source material. Well, what we did in putting together Marxist glossary is that in the expanded edition, the large edition, we have, bibliography, and we have footnotes and sources. That's 200. Now, 200 sources are substantial when they're organized in such a way where you can immediately access it.
You're talking about 200 glossary entries?
It's 200, is a little bit more than 200 entries. And in the back of the book are footnotes and source material that give you an online link to virtually every word, every quote, and every statement, so you can verify the material. So glossary in that sense, expanded edition, is unique. For instance, if we talk...
I'm sorry, now it's available online as the Marxist glossary?
Yeah.
Or give it the correct title?
You can find it at Marxist Glossary Discussion Facebook. You go there.
Okay, so it's just available on Facebook. It's not a piece of published material.
That's not correct. You can find a copy at Marxist Glossary Discussion Facebook under announcements. If you type in Marxist Glossary, you can find it on Amazon or at large. You can find a mini edition online, same place, or you can order it through Lulu Publication. Marxist Glossary is books that have been published. The first one that was published in 2014, but it exists.
Wow, that's great.
Books. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I'm the type of person, I need a physical copy.
Oh, I love paper. I adore paper, and I'm just like you in that sense. Like, I gotta have my physical copy to read, But I try to present it from the standpoint of having been with a group of comrades where we diligently studied this. So we're not novice. When I talk about things like productive forces, for instance, that's a word that's in glossary. And productive forces consist of all your means of production, your energy sources, your human labor, plus our mental capacity. When we talk about words like productive forces and define them, there is a link to where in Marx writings and Marx and Engels presentation, you can find how they discuss this and exactly why we defined it like we did.
Now,
Now,
Elder, excuse me again. Some people tend to say things like, we need to redefine some of these terms, or we need to update some of this terminology. For example, if you say proletariat, some people say, what in the world? Man, that's that 1960s, 70s talk, man. Tell us something else. What can we use to make it
to
current?
the comrades like that, I would ask them to try to contain their ignorance. The study of science requires a certain amount of discipline. Anyone that comes up with a better way to describe anything in life, win. But when we talk about a word like proletariat, if we don't know what it means, how can we discard it? If we know what it means, then why would you want to discard it? Because it's from the 70s? I mean, see, I'm 68 years old. I'm old enough to talk about certain things. It's just ignorance to pretend to know something we don't know. Now, when we talk about the proletariat, we're talking about a group in society with specific characteristics. Some people will call the proletariat an underclass. We talked about that. And I'm not in love with words in a way where I cling to them for no reason. If somebody can describe something accurately, and let's say you describe a layer of society accurately, and you say, I want to call this layer the underclass, I say more power to you. When you get into the world of intellectual rigor and discourse, a lot of people may not agree with you because words are historical. Words don't just happen. Words are historical. Sounds are historical. If we approach it from the standpoint of the Bible, in Genesis, it talks about how God gave Adam the power to name things. We name things in our culture. We give sound to them to describe something that we encounter in life. And that's the function of words. Like if I shift back to glossary for a minute, what's different about our glossary that grew up in the United States of North America, that came from a generation that was part of the last stage of the Industrial Revolution, right? The Henry Ford stage. Something different grew up on the basis of the industrial working class. So in our glossary, we open it up with the word abolitionism. Why? Because it expresses our vision. In fact, in the first glossary, the 2014 edition, when you open it up, it says, we are abolitionists on the side of the proletariat. We are abolitionists on the side of the proletariat. What is the proletariat? It's the lowest section of society. What is that lowest section of society? It is a mass of people who have nothing but their labor power to offer for sale. But that doesn't guarantee to be purchased, because we have a layer now of proletarians, a proletarian mass that's absolutely destitute. If we want to call them an underclass, that's fine, but we have to describe all their characteristics so at least we know what we're talking about. But if we talk about this first word, glossary, and why we started with abolitionism, let me just read real quick how we wrote it for mini edition. This is the mini edition. It says abolitionism is an ideology that ends slavery, injustice, exploitation, and is the moral and ethical foundation of all movements, trends, and impulses against equality in society. Today, abolitionism seeks to abolish capitalism because profit motive makes it impossible to meet everyone's human needs. Communists today are abolitionists on the side of a dispossessed proletariat born of the robot economy. So when we talk about abolitionism, it covers everything, like Angela Davis had popularized prison abolitionism. And I think she has done a fine job with popularizing that historically. But people have raised this year a demand about abolishing the police force as it existed. So abolitionism has a foundation and a basis in our society and stuff. And on that note, we can pull it in.
Excellent. It's a great entry. So I really appreciate it. If I could just get one last question
Sure.
in. When we discuss the science of society, we're essentially creating scientists. Where does one begin?
Well, when we began Glossary, we were aware that we faced virtually an impossible task because we had to try to create something that was relevant for a new generation. And at the same time, we wanted it to be part of a continuity of history. So what we ended up having to compromise, but with the new technology we have today, it gave us the ability to continuously update this book. So the book is being updated like once every 30 to 40 days. We print out a lot of single issue copies because we have the technology to do that. So the way we begin is through our connections in the social movement, where we get feedback and get a feel for a new generation in combat. We start there because I agree. Our job is to educate. We're not looking for any person that's just disgruntled with a beef. We are looking for people with a capacity to be educated, to be deeply cultured people, to have a mature vision of the new kind of society we want to live in. And those are the kind of people we're seeking out. We're not looking for anybody, man, that just want to squabble, right? Who have some heroic notion of being, just a great individual. No, we want people who are literate. You have to be able to read. And if you
Absolutely.
can't read, like, it's something else you can do to contribute. But the space I'm in is about literacy and fighting for the life of the mind. So that's where we begin. We begin with fighting for the life of the mind every day.
Beginning with the fight for the mind.
Every day.
Excellent. Every day. Excellent. Elder, I appreciate this beginning, this entry into our study of the science of society. And we're going to wrap it up here and pick back up on our next episode. I have some questions, and I'm sure our listeners will as well. So thank you for your time.
And I appreciate you, brother. I really do.
And this wraps up the science of society.
Right on. Peace.